That's what happened when these guys win the Super Bowl.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the new JFK show number 200.
No wonder we're celebrating. We got the champagne.
Yeah, I spilled it all over it, but that's what you're supposed to do, right?
That's right. You've actually got champagne there.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Can you share it with us, Gary? Yeah. Can you sort of, shove it through the screen?
I told everyone to bring their own, but
it's the BYOB, Jim.
Yeah.
What a downer! What a downer!
Yeah. But before Don, I think I'm gonna go ahead and hit some of this.
Ooh.
A little straight whiskey before Don's presentation.
You want to keep the fireworks going, Gary? It froze up, right?
Yeah,
I went ahead and stop it. There you go.
Take your cursor away so we don't have the bar there.
Yeah, that's true. So, all right. Well, before we get going, we have Don Fox with a presentation, Larry Rivera with another blog post, and I want to talk about what do you think we've accomplished in 200 shows as far as and keeping time. What do you think, fellas? What's your opinion, Dr. Fetzer?
You mean right now, Gary?
Yeah.
Look, it's been sensational. This has been the cutting edge of JFK research, no doubt about it. We've got Larry on the man in the doorway. We got Larry on Blender. We got Ralph on Who Really Shot Lee Oswald. I mean, for new developments in JFK, this is the place.
Jim, I think I was talking to Gary today, and I was asking him about the statistics on the JFK Horseman videos, and I was just blown away completely. Now you know why they had to be removed from YouTube.
Yeah, those were the shows with the most views. JFK Who, How, and Why. No, JFK at 50 Who, How, and Why had the most views of all. And then right behind that, the JFK Horseman, 1 and 2, right behind each other.
Yeah, but how many views and how many subscribers, Gary?
Well, when we were terminated from YouTube, we had 8,000 subscribers. We had 380 videos up, and
wow.
Yours, I think the JFK Horseman had 50,000 views each, something like that. And Dr. Fetzer's had like 250,000 on his. But plus we had a lot.
Gary, have we got them all back up yet?
No, I haven't put them all up yet. No, I haven't. All of the shows since we were terminated are going up, but I'll get them back up. I'm trying to work on that right now.
Where are they going up?
News.
153 News is what we're gonna do. And I might even put them up on YouTube only under JFK video. But I have a feeling as soon as you see Jim Fetzer on there, it's over.
It's amazing. Just amazing.
And you're on every show, so they'll probably take
a magnet for deletion and suppression.
Absolutely. So Larry, what do you think about all this work we've been doing? 200 shows now. You got to think about that for a minute.
Well, it's been a long haul, man. 3 years at least. I'm speechless.
Yeah, and the thing that blows me away is that there's always something new, and there's other sides to this story that you cannot find anywhere else, and that's why we have.
Oh, there it is.
Don Fox with us.
Woohoo!
Can bring you some real truth, and he's actually raring to go. And then, so Don, I'm gonna ask you the same question, man. What do you think about the show? What are we doing? How are we doing?
Well, I mean, I've enjoyed it immensely. The only reason I ever got into 9/11 and JFK research was I used to be a guy that sat in the basement and bitched about the government. Now I get to do it on YouTube, and the only reason I do this is to shove it up the ass of the man. That's it. I don't get paid for any of this. That's why I'm here. I'm just here to be a pain in the ass. That's it.
The deep state, Don, the deep state.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the deep state.
You got the documents to prove it. See, that's
you succeed beyond all wild expectations, Don.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm here for. And as long as they're angry at me, then I've mission accomplished. I've done my part.
All right, so we're going with Larry Rivera first tonight, and then we're gonna, you know, what we'll be doing with Don. We'll be ringing the bell.
Don first.
What? Sorry?
Don first.
I'm sorry.
I said Don first.
He wants me to go first.
Oh, you want Don to go first? Uh-oh, we're in trouble now. Okay.
I was going to say I'd be happy to have Larry go first, but if he wants me to go, I got her teed up. We can do it.
Yeah, let's do yours, Larry. It's like, I read some of it today. Are you want it? Y'all figure it out.
You man, you know I'm gonna, you know, it's up to you. You want to do it? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Let me get queued up here.
Gary, hold that bottle up again. What do you got there?
It's Four Roses Bourbon. It's for the Kentucky Derby.
Ah, okay. All right, well, I don't drink anymore, but this is from my tailgating days back in Minneapolis. I've got the doctor. In case something is ailing you, you know.
It's very medicinal.
Yes, we have a little elixir here, a little dust on it, but
We did have
Dr. McGillicuddy, yeah, if you're having some issues out there.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
If you've never tried it, try Bullet Bourbon. It's the smoothest I ever had. Bullet.
Good. There's a problem, Dr. Fetzer. I don't drink.
Oh, yeah, I
Except tonight.
respect that.
Except tonight. I'm telling you, it's the first drink I've had maybe in 5 years. So if I pass out, y'all know what happened.
Ooh.
Maybe
I've been dry for about a year now, so.
This is how you win the Triple Crown.
Wow.
With this stuff here. Yep.
Little straight shot of bourbon there, huh, Gary?
that Belmont
Yes, I did.
was a great race, by the way. I enjoyed justifying all three.
Oh, yeah.
Kentucky and Belmont more than Preakness.
Y'all may not believe me, but I am going to be starting a radio show on WGSO called that Horse Racing Show. I'm going to be doing a horse racing show. You gotta know all that.
All
Just for the
right.
fun. Yeah, for the fun and profit of it, because I'm going to be charging for the commercials. You can bet. Down at the local track, off-track betting, you can bet. So.
All right.
Who we got? This Chiquita.
Yeah, man, she's a nominee. You know what we're talking about come Christmas time.
It's time to talk about Elena.
Yeah, I like Elena already.
Well, let me just start by saying that when we did, those people that have been following this series, we talked about Leering 3 and Carlos Jurado del Mar as a CIA asset in Mexico City working for one Wallace B. Roughton and being a spy, where he did a lot of work going back and forth to Cuba and to Guatemala and everything. And he happens to be the first source of the CIA who said that Sylvia Duran and Lee Oswald had an affair while Lee Oswald supposedly was in Mexico City. And at that time, when I wrote this first post here, Leering 3, and I'm going to go briefly here to it on the third paragraph here, I mentioned here Elena Garro de Paz, his allegation of being invited with two other beatnik-looking guys by Duran to a twist party was also of dubious credibility. And at that time, I said that note, Elena Garro de Paz deserves a blog post all to herself, which will be forthcoming. Okay, now that was way back in, when did we write this? January.
It doesn't just deserve a blog post, but a centerfold spread.
Yeah, man.
Well, the story of Elena is quite impressive. You know, she was, I'll let Jim, pick it up here because Jim is the master of ceremonies, for this type of thing.
So one question is she still around?
No. She passed in 20 years ago, but it says here 22 August 1998, muere, passes away. And, after the Leering 3 documentation of the CIA of having documented the Oswald Duran affair, this is the other source of that affair and how she was inserted into the JFK assassination saga is really amazing. It's fascinating stuff here. So I figured that I figured that this would be very interesting, for the 200th show. But I found, just so happens that a couple of days ago, I found an unredacted document in the latest release of April, this past April, that was unredacted and had never been released. And it, it just talks nothing but, everything that Garro de Paz had to do with the assassination and the supposed affair that Lee Oswald had with Sylvia Durant. So without further ado, I think
Rondo Del Mar blog post, I wrote that Elena Garro de Paz deserved a post all to herself due to her involvement in the Sylvia Durant affair. While pursuing the latest AARB document release dated April 17, 2018, I have found a heretofore unreleased and unredacted, very important document cited by the Lopez and Hardaway report. It will be discussed at the end of this article. As previously noted, the Lopez report is truly a gargantuan accomplishment given the extreme surveillance Dan and Eddie were under while trying to extricate and interpret documents at Langley for the HSCA. The reader will recall that they were not allowed to photocopy documents, only take notes, and even these were inspected by babysitters before Lopez and Hardaway were allowed to leave the premises. Here's a sample of these notes.
Yeah, and this one in particular talks about the imposter that was photographed outside of the Soviet embassy, Jim. And you go here and you go, FBI says that the photos of the man entering the Soviet embassy, which Mexico sent to Dallas, were not of Lee Oswald. Presumably, Mexico has doubled, and there's a SIC double-checked the data of these photos, and is also checking out all pertinent other photos for possible shots of Oswald. Okay, so, and then it talks about a good pastor. Now, this is just one page of the Hardaway Lopez notes, and we're talking about, I would have to say, probably more than 1,000 pages of notes, Jim, that I have seen. But this one in particular is just a sample.
And look how outrageous are the conditions under which they're allowed to operate. I mean, it's just beyond belief.
That's right. They were there for 18 months, Jim. And we had a couple of shows where we described exactly, what Lopez and Hardaway were doing over there. As they were very young, fresh out of law school, the hippie types, with afros and long hair, shorts and stuff, and flip-flops, going over to Langley to interact, with, some of the big shots over there, including Joanides, of all people. Okay, and we all know the situation with Joanides.
Still not released his file, Larry. I think that will be the last one they'll ever release.
If ever.
I know, that's my belief. They will never let that out.
Yeah, because those progress reports have to do with the exactly those months, before and after, during and after the assassination. But
actually, not only setting up JFK, but also RFK.
Yeah, and also how, he was the supervisor, of the Cuban exiles in New Orleans, and he was very much involved, in the mopping up as Eddie Lopez describes in that wonderful documentary, the RFK that you were just mentioning. What was the name?
Shane O'Sullivan.
Shane O'Sullivan, exactly. Where he described, how he thought that those two guys, at the Ambassador Hotel were actually Morales and Joanides and whatever. But that's not what we're going to talk about here. I think that Elena is really going to fill, the whole agenda here, because this is really fascinating stuff. Go ahead.
Elena Garro de Paz, 1916 to 1998. So she was 82, I take it, when she died. Was one of the most popular and enigmatic Mexican journalists, novelists, playwrights, and poets of her time. She married literary Nobel laureate Octavio Paz in 1937, with whom she maintained a love-hate relationship, and remained married to Paz until their divorce in 1959.
This was a very important woman, and I'm just going to briefly go here. If you guys can see this, because this is actually from a Mexican newspaper. Can you guys see this? Okay,
Yeah.
and this is sort of like an obituary of hers, and it describes a lot of her life, you know, in very exquisite detail. Okay, but at the time she was extremely popular. She was extremely.
Yeah, read it for us.
No, we're not going to do that. Extremely influential. She moved in political circles, you know, with the PRI, which was a PRI, which is at that time the most important political party in Mexico, and the government, and you know, actors and playwrights and musicians and everything. She was at the top echelon of society in Mexico at the time, Jim. So
Very, very interesting, Larry. I'm so many in Mexico still blame her for supposedly instigating to the Tlatelolco massacre in 1968, which is considered one of the worst modern-day massacres ever. Even today, the Mexican government refuses to release documents pertaining to the massacre on grounds of national security. Does sound familiar indeed. Tell us about the massacre, Larry.
the Tlatelolco massacre actually happened right before the Olympics of 1968. And it was a massacre. Here's an article that I found, okay? And some of the documents actually came from the United States on regarding the what happened there, because the Mexican government to this day refuses to release you know, what they know, because what happened is as you can see here, this photograph at the left, the army went and completely did sort of like a Kent State. But to the
Except with hundreds of victims instead of 3 or 4.
Right. That's right. 200 to 300 victims, you know, and up until that time, it was something that had never been seen in Mexico, even though Mexico has an ongoing history of not only corruption, but assassination, political assassinations, you know, and suppression and stuff like that. And but this was something that shocked the world. Even when the Olympics were held in Mexico City in 1968, nobody, that entire area, Jim, was completely off limits. It was barricaded. It was completely off limits to any of the visiting delegations. Anybody who wanted to go was an instigator, you know, of that event. You know, again,
A propagandist, possibly?
yeah. Well, you know,
Provocateur.
yeah, exactly. Now here we continue. Elena de Paz. Right.
Elena Garro de Paz was also the cousin of Silvia Tredo de Duran's husband, Horacio Duran, as well as his siblings, Ruby.
I have to interject here quickly. Before, in our previous post, we mentioned Sylvia Duran, okay? And in Latin America, our audience has to understand that the woman, when she marries, does not take the surname of the husband like they do in the United States. In Latin America, they continue to use their maiden name, Silvia Tirado, just as Garro. Garro's maiden name was Elena Garro. When she married Octavio Paz, she becomes Octavio,
De Paz.
Yeah, de Paz. She becomes Elena Garro de Paz. Elena Garro de Paz, okay? And the same situation here should have happened with Sylvia Duran. And this is important because right after the assassination, Silvia Tirado de Duran, completely changed, her name changed to Silvia Duran, because that is the way that the United States and, of FBI and the CIA and everybody wanted to project her towards, the American public as Silvia Duran, not as Silvia Tirado de Duran, which is the name that she would have gone by in Mexico. Okay, so that's what that's about. So
there's a way of obfuscating her identity.
Yes, of course. Horacio Duran, as well as a sibling. Now, Elena was also the cousin of Silvia Tirado de Duran's husband, Horacio Duran, as well as siblings Ruben and Lidia Duran. Rumor has it that she hated Silvia. Now, Gary and I were talking about this today, and as you can see, Elena was more of a Caucasian, European type of extraction, and Sylvia was more of the type of the Indian type, Aztec-looking, extraction. And obviously, you know, and this is what the way I see it, that when Horacio married Sylvia, you know, perhaps Elena did not really agree with that marriage, you know, so they had a conflict, you know, they had issues between one another. You know, that's just, you know, a hypothesis of mine, because rumor has it that she hated Sylvia, okay? So anyway, we pick it up right here, the Durans.
The Durans were thoroughly worked over, meaning beaten up and intimidated by Mexican authorities after the assassination. In fact, Sylvia wrote in her personal account that Horacio's jaw was dislocated as a result of the beating he received. Now, how is Garro de Paz inserted into the JFK assassination saga? The Charles Thomas memo. Besides the Luring 3 fiasco as a source of a supposed Duran-Oswald love affair, Garro de Paz emerged as a second corroborating source of that supposed affair. An extremely rare memorandum dated 12/25/65 about a meeting held on 12/10/65, authored by U.S. Embassy political officer Charles William Thomas, and cited in books and articles, especially in the Lopez report, documented a supposed encounter that Garro de Paz had with a Lee Harvey Oswald at the time of Oswald's supposed visit to Mexico City. I briefly described this encounter at a party which was attended by 3 American beatnik-looking fellows in the first Luring 3 post. However, I did not show the actual memorandum because it was not at maryfarrell.org. I found it at the Harold Weisberg Hood College JFK document repository, buried among other FBI documents. Here's a portion thereof.
Let me briefly go to that document here. It's 50 pages here at the top, as you can see. And you don't get to see the...
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, you don't get to see the document until... let me see.
Sorry, this is so absurd when they redact them like that.
Yeah, until page 6, okay? And like I said, it's buried in between other documents, okay? And this is the actual document. And you don't even get a clear version of it, okay? But still, you know, if you study it, you can tell, you know, you can discern, you know, what's in it, okay? So we'll go back.
This is the parts that were redacted?
No, we'll go later on. This is a portion of this, and this is the Charles Thomas memo, and it's dated the 25th of December, Christmas Day, 1965. But the actual interview did not occur until 15 days earlier, December the 10th. And in this document, he's describing what Elena Garro de Paz told him about her encounter with Lee Oswald supposedly at this party. And she's setting the date of the party as September 2 or 3, 1967 and 3rd. She actually cites that Soviet astronaut Gagarin, and she placed the date of the encounter when because she had marked it by Soviet astronaut Gagarin's visit to Mexico City during that time, but it turns out that didn't happen. That did not happen until February the 2nd, earlier in the year. So Garro de Paz already, you're starting to see, you know, confusion in what she's trying to establish here in this memo with Charles Thomas. So
you're already implying that her role was covert and corrupt, to a member making a spectacle of themselves by yelling "Fidel Assassino." I imagine we know what that means, among other barbarities and insults.
Yeah. And here it says on Saturday, November the 23rd, 1963, the day after the assassination, Mrs. de Paz's brother drove her and her daughter at about 3 p.m. to the Cuban embassy. Her brother was embarrassed by their behavior and drove a block up the street and wait for them after letting them out. The two women then went inside of the gate and shouted "assassin" and other insults. That is amazing, Jim. You know, I don't know if you've ever heard about that, but
no, never.
Yeah. This is Elena Garro. That's why, you know, she was so colorful in this whole thing here on JFK. And, you know, when she inserts herself in this whole thing about
Well, it sounds like she was CIA. If you're going to call Fidel assassin, you're obviously trying to promote the idea he had something to do where we had Lee being set up in New Orleans, handing out the Fair Play for Cuba committee handouts and all that. So this is a part of it.
You're too much. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Okay, so basically, this whole memo, which was discovered many, many years later, okay, and here at the end, Senora de Paz stated it was common knowledge that Silvia Duran was the mistress of Oswald. The only person she could remember who told her that, however, was one Victor Rico Gallon, the Procaster journalist. So, you know, already we're starting to see, you know, how this is
fabricated stories.
Yeah, yeah. So then let's move on to the memo.
The memo cited in the Lopez report.
These are the actual memos, and I want to interject here quickly because don't forget that what we established earlier, that Lopez and Hardaway saw these memos, but were not able to make copies of them. They had to write, okay, what was contained in them. That's why the Lopez report is so impressive.
May I say that's a very important technique if you're talking about fabrications, because then they only record the contents, not the document, which might be provable as fraudulent or fake. So that's a clever technique, Larry.
Well, you know, they were handcuffed, you know, by the limitations of, you know, what Langley, don't forget they were there for 18 months, okay? And, you know, during all that time, you know, okay, they were presented with documents, but they were only allowed to make notes, which we saw previously. So memorandums which have no way of being traced back to the author are known as blind memorandums. That's how Lopez and Hardaway described them in the bibliography of their report. And those are, you know, really mysterious memorandums, Jim, you know, where you go back, you know, and they say, okay, this is a blind memorandum because nobody is taking credit for it, you know. Right. And I think that's very important because later on we're going to see, you know, how that plays out.
Well, it's a great way to promote disinformation.
Yeah, of course.
The Weisberg file shown above contains this additional document regarding Garro deposit is from Director to Legal Attaché, Mexico City, in response to a cable of 12/17/65, also shown below. Notice at the bottom left how no one in the upper hierarchy of the FBI acknowledged receiving, much less reading, this memorandum.
Let's take a quick look at this. 12/22/65. Okay, now first, and I give you, I'm going to show you guys a chronology of these memos, you know, in a little bit. Okay, and it's from Director. Who was Director of FBI in 1965, Jim?
Well, J. Edgar was still.
Of course. Now, why wouldn't he sign and acknowledge, you know, himself as the author of this memo? Okay.
Well, it was a fabrication. I think that's the explanation.
Well, this is coming straight from documents, you know, from the government, Jim. So this is, and within this memo, okay, it says, you will know.
It's something that he doesn't want to acknowledge knowing.
Right. And see at the bottom here, you've seen so many FBI documents.
Where it says, you'll note in your office has previously established that instant allegation by Mrs. Elena Garro de Paz has no basis in fact. So this is discrediting of her. So he doesn't want to acknowledge that she's not a good witness.
But what we're going to establish here is a back and forth between the FBI and the CIA, which we're going to see in a minute. But you see here at the bottom where you've seen so many where they do the check mark, you know, and everybody that receives the memo.
Tulsa, the large, all the high-ranking FBI officials.
Nobody saw this.
Yeah,
okay?
That's very good, Larry.
So what we're looking at here is plausible deniability.
Yes.
Is what this is called.
Yes.
Okay, where this memo circulates, and this is a memo that actually exculpates Lee Oswald, because it's saying that the woman that says that he had an affair with Silvia Duran and that she saw him at a party, you know, has no basis in fact. Okay. So we're going to go on to now.
If you want to build a case against Oswald, this is not a memo you want to promote or even acknowledge it being read.
Now, this is the CIA telex, you know, cable, And I think this deserves a lot of our attention because this one, this is just incredible. It's cited again in the Lopez report and in these other memos. Okay, see, regarding your telegram of 12/17/65. You see this? Well,
Yeah.
Here it is, 12/17/65. Okay, now the first one is the FBI. The second one is CIA, Jim. Now, let's see how they interpret the information.
Elena Garro de Paz, wife of prominent Mexican poet, Mexican ambassador Octavio Paz Zolan, told embassy political officer Charles W. Thomas that she met Lee Harvey Oswald in September 1963 at a party at the home of Ruben Duran. Oswald was with two Americans. They remained apart from other guests. Guests included communists or philo-communists. She remembered seeing Cuban consul General Clark Flores, a Mexican Olympic Committee, Sylvia Duran, who she claimed Oswald's mistress, while in Mexico, Emilia Cabrero, a writer she now thinks in the United States, and Latin American Negro man with red hair.
Red hair.
Garro de Paz said she and daughter
went
to Cuban embassy, November 1963, and inside front gate shouted assassin and insults at staff. Shortly afterwards, she claims a friend, Manuel Carvillo, an official in Gobernacion, escorted her and daughter to obscure hotel and kept them for 8 days under pretext they were in danger. She claimed she wanted to go to American embassy and tell Oswald's connection with American communists and Cubans, but was told American embassy full of communist spies. Other people at a party with Oswald included, I can't read it all. They were protected by Governor Lopez Arnaz. Ruben Duran, according to Carl, is protected by General Flores and drives big car looking very prosperous. Many communists, Mexico, believe Kennedy assassination result communist plot engineered by Fidel Castro. Ruben Duran tells Garro de Paz she's not communist and great mistake to kill Kennedy.
Okay, right there. Now notice how the prominence here of communists, philo-communists at the party. Cuban consul Ascue, okay, he was supposedly a communist, and you're placing, Oswald at this party with all these communists. I think it's pretty obvious here.
Yeah.
That they are trying.
This is a setup.
Yeah, of course. Now notice that we're going to talk about the chronology of these memos and telexes, in a minute. But I think this one speaks volumes because this is a CIA reaction, okay, to Thomas's original meeting with Garro de Paz, where not only are they saying, wait a minute, don't forget that in the previous memo, Garro de Paz talked about the beginning of September, but now they're saying September. Okay, they're not, they are opening, the time frame of the encounter so that it fits the end of September 1963, which is when the government says that Lee Oswald obviously went to Mexico
City. To be in Mexico City.
Yeah. So then now this is the memo that I found. Okay, and you're going to see the first incarnation of this memo and the one that I found. Okay, because this one is really important.
Blind FBO memo of 09/30/69, recently released on 30 September 1969, an FBI CIA liaison memo was written by someone who decided to set the record straight about the supposed sighting of Oswald in Mexico City by Garro de Paz. The first incarnation of this memo was heavily redacted. Again, the heading is from director to legal attaché in Mexico City. Here is the memo.
First, let's look at the first incarnation, and this is at Mary Farrell, okay? And this is laughable, okay? I'm just gonna go quickly here, okay? As you can see, the redactions of the memo, and when I present what I found, you're gonna see that none of this is redacted, and I think the most important portion of this memo is gonna be the last page, okay? Because we're on page 6 and now 7, and you see that this is the most important part of this memo, even though it has nothing to do about the affair, the Duran Oswald affair, because it tells you exactly the relationship that existed between the CIA and the Mexican government. Now, here I'm going to show you with, the names of Sylvia and Thomas, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to go here to the last page.
Yeah, show us that paragraph that was redacted.
Yeah, but we're going to come to that later because that's going to be very important at the end of this presentation. But here's the last page 7, okay? And everything is non-redacted except for this little portion here. But it doesn't matter. It's going to give you a real good indication of the relationship between the CIA and the Mexican government. So,
who wrote the memo of 9/30/69? Obviously by the legal attaché officer in Mexico City of the U.S. Embassy.
No. Go further up. Why
the anonymity of these memoranda? Why would no one acknowledge them? Regarding the 9/30/69 memo, why the redactions when it was first released? The information contained here completely demolishes Garro de Paz's credibility, hence the notion that Lee had an affair with Sylvia Duran and that the FBI knew this to be the case. The memo is obviously written by the legal attaché officer in Mexico City.
I'm not going to go deeply into this, but this is the portion of the memo that gives you the clue. Don't forget that this is a blind memo that I found. It's not, and nowhere do you see the author or nowhere where it is signed off by anybody. Okay, but you get a couple of clues here where he says that this office dated 12/27/65 and 2/23/66, copies of which are enclosed. Okay, and then here at the top, he says, I took over as legal attaché when Mr. Scott, obviously Win Scott, told me he had received a memorandum which he believed I should see. Okay, so obviously, you know, this is the guy that's authoring the memo, and then he's talking about 2 memos that he authored on 12/27/65 and 2/23/66. And then when you look for those memos, you know, the author of those memos are none other than Nathan L. Ferris. Nathan L. Ferris was the head of the U.S. Embassy legal attaché in Mexico City at the time. So to make a long story short, this is how we deduce that is the guy who was the author of the blind memo. And what he's doing here is he is mopping up after, you know, this whole situation with Elena Garro and the Lee Oswald, Sylvia Duran, to set exactly the date of Lee Oswald's supposed trip to Mexico City, interviewed by personnel of this office, okay, at which time they furnished information in the reference memorandums. Inquiries conducted at that time, however, failed to substantiate the allegation. So, closing the case, okay, and a memo where he's talking about another date. He's talking about late September and early October. So, we go on here to the deep.
One of the most important revelations of this memo has nothing to do with Garro de Paz or Sylvia Duran. Consider the redacted versus non-redacted versions of the final paragraphs of the memorandum.
Now, this is the redacted, and note here, this redaction here is Thomas, and this one here is Garro. Okay, so those are the 2 names that they didn't want you to see. And let me tell you, Jim, this is like, you know, the amount of, I don't even know.
You should have found this as rather semi-miraculous.
Yes. Okay, now let's talk about
Mr. Thomas's judgment of CIA Mexico and top Mexican officials, if true, is a very highly classified matter. So that's going to have to be something involving financial or other connections or contacts. Any leak or revelation of unauthorized individuals concerning such an arrangement would, in view of the delicate Mexican political situation, be disastrous to the Mexican government as well as to Mexican-American relations. The delicacy of the situation has recently been greatly augmented by the published Cuban allegation that one of the officers of the Mexican embassy in Havana was acting as a CIA spy with the knowledge of the Mexican government. Mr. Thomas, however, included such a highly classified reference in a memorandum which he classified only as confidential, contrary to regulations relative to classification of documents. While this reference relates to the activities and operation of another government agency, and therefore is not a primary concern to the Bureau, it is nevertheless called to the Bureau's attention for consideration in evaluating Mr. Thomas's current allegations.
So basically here, what we're seeing here is a very close relationship between the CIA and top Mexican officials, okay, which is true, obviously. And this rebounds back to the Sylvia Duran situation, because we all know that the U.S. government, the CIA, did not get involved in the Sylvia Duran interrogations. They allowed the Mexicans to take the lead on that, obviously because they did not want any repercussions on that, you know. And Mexico being, you know, such a cauldron, you know, of protests, you know, and instability, which obviously would have been catastrophic, you know, to any type of intervention, you know, by the U.S. government, especially after the assassination of the president. Now here we can pick it up.
The CIA's control over the Mexican government here is unprecedented and explains how and why Sylvia Duran and her husband Horacio underwent the abuse they did at the hands of the Mexican authorities on behalf of the deep state of the USA. To summarize the timing of communications from CIA and FBI regarding Elena Garro de Paz, 12/10/65, Charles Thomas meets Garro de Paz but does not document the meeting in a memo until 12/25/65. According to Garro, she saw Lee Oswald at a party in Mexico City on September 2nd or 3rd, 1963. 12/17/65, CIA Mexico City shoots a cable declaring that Garro de Paz information is gospel. Ignoring the date, she stated as early September, settling on the more non-specific date, September. Also notice the mention of communists and philo-communists, an obvious attempt to pigeonhole Oswald. The second page of the cable declares that many communists in Mexico believe the CIA hit was engineered by Castro.
That is such a crock, Jim.
I know, it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
12/27/65, Nathan Ferris covers the embassy's ass by writing a memo where he agrees with the FBI and declares, quote,
You jumped one. 12/22.
Oh, yeah, okay. 12/22/65, Director of FBI Hoover writes a blind memo dated 12/22/65 addressed to legal attaché in Mexico City, where he writes there is, quote, no basis in fact regarding Garro's allegations and that Lee Oswald was not in Mexico City at that time. 12/27/65, Nathan Ferris covers the embassy's ass by writing a memo where he agrees with the FBI and declares that inquiries conducted at that time, November 17th and 24th, 1964, however, failed to substantiate the allegations made by Mrs. Garro and her daughter, end quote.
Yep.
2/23/66, Nathan Ferris now writes a memo trying to redefine Oswald's visit to Mexico City to a date after 9/26/63. 9/30/69, Nathan Ferris writes a 7-page detailed memo where he sets the record straight regarding Garro de Paz. He writes that in November 1964, Garro informed the embassy that the date of her Oswald encounter was either September 30th or October 1st or 2nd, 1963. Ferris ends the memo by taking a shot at the deep state, revealing the intimate relationship between Mexican government and the CIA. This portion remains unredacted until April 2018.
Yeah, and we just revealed that redaction, Jim.
How ridiculous! Oh, you mean now, here and now?
Yeah, right here. That we just.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. This and this.
Got it. These clearly indicate some kind of arm twisting going on here. The redactions are obvious when examined from a chronological point of view. Finally, as mentioned above, the memos shown in this post were the basis for the Lopez report, which concluded there was no evidence of a Duran-Oswald affair.
And this is a copy of, one of the pages of the Lopez report, okay? And I'll just briefly, Sylvia Duran admitted that the Mexican police had questioned her on this point, but denied that she had ever had an affair with Oswald. Ms. Duran denied having any extramarital affairs while she was married to Horacio Duran. This now is not consistent with evidence of her reputation at the Cuban consulate. Now, let's talk a little bit about that supposed reputation.
That's just made up.
Yeah, of course, because it says a CIA penetration agent there reported to his case officer that all that would have to be done to recruit Civilization, whom he referred to by using the Spanish word for whore, which means putita, would be to get a blonde, blue-eyed American into bed with her. That is so freaking...
Larry, this technique reminds me of Wikipedia. Would you believe Wikipedia does not use original sources, but only secondary sources? Because the secondary source can give any spin they want, so they can pick and choose among the secondary, never having to confront the basic evidence, which is the original source material.
Yeah, primary source material. So they're talking about the CIA penetration agent and Mrs. Duran, okay? Now, an interview with the agent was also desired as to attempt to verify whether Elena Garro had created disturbance, and to actually, what Lopez and Hardway are saying, we tried to find that penetration agent, you know? And guess what? The committee's attempts to interview the agent was frustrated. Oh, really? Are you kidding me? Hello? Okay.
Right. When Lopez tried to track down the CIA penetration agent who spread the rumor of Duran's promiscuity, of course, he was unsuccessful in doing so. Was this penetration agent Luring 3? I would bet the farm.
Exactly. And we know what Luring 3 was all about. Okay, so, you know, the guy is anonymous. We know that Luring 3 was
great stuff.
The first.
This would really be good for you to present at the conference, but I think that there are parties there who would be unenthusiastic.
It would be too deep for it. It'd probably be too deep for half of them.
Yeah, don't forget that we did a couple of shows about Luring 3, remember? And what a scumbag he was, you know, and that he would lie, you know, he would sell his mother, you know, for a couple of bucks, you know, and we even presented, remember his photograph that I found on
agencies like the CIA find operatives like him invaluable.
Yeah, and I would just want to say...
This is like the FBI changing their 302 forms, their raw data for transcripts, you know, to make the case they want to make. This guy makes the case they want to make.
Of course, and I think this speaks volumes of how they form and they configure, you know, whatever they want to be the truth out there, you know. And I just want to say this, and I don't want to, you know, go into any detail, but I have friends in Mexico City that are, you know, actually looking into a lot of this information, you know, and, you know, we're going to talk about this, you know, in the future, but this is something that has really surprised some of the people there because they did not know about the details of what Luring 3 was about, you know, and how the CIA, you know, was in such close association, you know, with the Mexican government, you know.
Yeah, so. She was an informant. Look, everybody at the radio station, TV stations, and magazines were working for CIA. But we better get going if we're gonna get with Larry. I mean, do Don's.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm done.
Okay, Don, you hit screen share.
Okay, guys. Larry, you want to?
Larry's got to end screen share.
Larry's got to drop.
Yeah. Sorry. Got it. Okay.
All right. I'll grab the screen here. Okay, so just a little preamble here.
You want me to play the clip first?
No,
or later?
We're gonna do a couple slides, then I'll have you play some of that, and then we'll hit it. So if you know, going after a certain ethnic group,
constituency.
If that kind of doesn't sit well with you, now's maybe a good time to tune out, because we're gonna hit it pretty hard here tonight. Now, our show goes places where the other guys don't, okay? You can tune in anywhere, and they're going to tell you that, well, it was a coup d'etat, and it was the CIA involved, and the FBI, and...
That's all okay.
Yeah, okay.
Talk about the shooters, which angle, from behind.
So
that's okay.
So we're going to even, you know, and the Israel thing has come up, you know, and that hasn't been met with a lot of applause in most corners of the JFK research community, but we're even going to push it a little farther tonight. So
Why not?
we are going down to.
Right, that's it. That's it.
You know, I might even have a shot too when this thing's over. As we say, you know, as me and my buddies say, we're going down to the bottom of the rabbi hole tonight.
Okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready.
Okay.
The rabbi
All right.
hole?
The rabbi hole, yes.
Not the rabbit.
Some guys chase rabbits. Well, we chase rabbis around here. So, all right, I'm going to grab the old screen.
Yeah, I can't get involved in that because I might get pigeonholed, you know, with you.
Well, yeah.
Right, a dangerous guy to
Yeah,
associate.
you know what happened, you know, with the trial.
Oh yeah, yeah. We know what happened.
Yes.
You
Yes,
found
indeed.
your bell.
Yeah, so Gary's got his bell warmed up. Okay, so here we go. So we've had a lot of theories over the years of exactly why did the JFK assassination take place? Was this a power grab? Was it the military-industrial complex? Was it for the Vietnam War? Was it for the Israeli nuclear program? Which,
Now you're getting somewhere.
yeah, that's warm. You know, permanent
All of the
attacks.
above and more.
Yes. So, well, I think the ultimate goal of the JFK assassination was to remove white European Christians from power and get Jews in there to destroy white Christian civilization. That's the ultimate goal of the assassination, and we're going to touch on that tonight. So the slideshow here is LBJ advances the Jewish white genocide agenda, examining the devastating effects of the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act. Okay, so keys to understanding LBJ's role in the JFK assassination. LBJ was a crypto Jew operating on behalf of international Jewry, advancing their agenda to destroy white European Christian civilization. LBJ's Aunt Jessie was a member of the Zionist Organization of America. LBJ's father and grandfather sought clemency for Jewish pedophile and murderer Leo Frank, as we talked about last week. The KKK in Texas threatened to kill the Johnsons, and LBJ smuggled hundreds of Jews into Galveston, Texas. And continued, LBJ smuggled arms into Palestine before Israel became a state. LBJ forced his way onto the 1960 presidential ticket with the help of Jewish ethnic networking and power. And the international Jewish media fully participated in the cover-up, which is going on to this very day, 54 years after the assassination. So while LBJ played a key role in the assassination, there's no doubt about that, he was merely the front man for a much larger power structure, and that was international Jewry, which still runs the world to this day. Hence why the cover-up continues. And Johnson ceased all inspections of Dimona. And one underreported aspect in the JFK community has been the Johnson signing of the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act at the behest of international Jewry. So who was pushing for the change in the United States immigration policy? Ding, 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 correct. So here we've got Jewish Senator Jacob Javits played a prominent role in the Senate hearings on the open immigration law of 1965. Javits authored an article entitled, "Let Us Open the Gates," that proposed immigration levels of 500,000 per year for 20 years with no restrictions on national origin.
God, look at the stunning number that would be. I mean, that's 10 million people.
Yeah. The 1965 open immigration law is presently fulfilling the aims of the Jewish conspiracy as seen in its effects. The U.S. Census Bureau projects that by the year 2050, European-derived peoples will no longer be a majority of the population of America due to the massive influx of immigrants since the signing of the bill in 1965.
This is what Trump is in the middle of, trying to stop this.
Yes, yes. And this is why the JFK assassination is still relevant 54 years later. The Jews have also given these immigrants a moral mandate to expand both demographically and politically. And expand they will and do. But any attempts by European-derived peoples to retain demographic, political, and cultural control in America are represented by Jews as being racist and immoral.
Look at the attacks on Trump for just trying to control Mexican immigration from Mexico across the borders.
Trump is under heavy attack just for suggesting the fact that the United States should have a border.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and play that clip, Gary. We'll play a few minutes of that.
All right, give me the screen share.
I will stop and give it back to you.
We're going to go over, Gary, it looks.
Yeah.
Looks like it.
Well, a little bonus for our 200th here. A little overtime.
Right.
Okay, hold on.
A little bonus content for the folks out there.
Pause.
Yeah, hit pause.
The president's remarks upon signing the immigration bill on Liberty Island in New York City, October 3rd, 1965.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Ambassador Goldberg, distinguished members of the leadership of the Congress, distinguished governors and mayors, my fellow countrymen. We have called the Congress here this afternoon not only to mark a very historic occasion, but to settle a very old issue that is in dispute. That issue is to what congressional district does Liberty Island really belong? Congressman Farbstein or Congressman Gallagher? It will be settled by whomever of the two can walk first to the top of the Statue of Liberty. This bill that we will sign today is not a revolutionary bill. It does not affect the lives of millions. It will not reshape the structure of our daily lives or really add importantly to either our wealth or our power. Yet it is still one of the most important acts of this Congress and of this administration. For it does repair a very deep and painful flaw in the fabric of American justice. It corrects a cruel and enduring wrong in the conduct of the American nation. Speaker McCormick and Congressman Seller, more than almost 40 years ago, first pointed that out in their maiden speeches in the Congress. And this measure that we will sign today will really make us truer to ourselves, both as a country and as a people. It will strengthen us in 100 unseen ways. And I have come here to thank personally each member of the Congress who labored so long and so valiantly to make this occasion come true today and to make this bill a reality. I cannot mention all their names, for it would take much too long. But my gratitude and that of this nation belongs to the 89th Congress. We are in debt to the vision of the late beloved President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and to the support given to this measure by the then Attorney General and now Senator Robert F. Kennedy. In the final days of consideration, this bill had no more able champion than the present Attorney General, Nicholas Katzenbach, who with New York's own Manny Seller and Senator Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts and Congressman Fegan of Ohio and Senator Mansfield and Senator Dirksen constituting the leadership of the Senate and Senator Javits helped to guide this bill to passage along with the help of the members sitting in front of me today. This bill says simply that from this day forth, those wishing to immigrate to America shall be admitted on the basis of their skills and their close relationships to those already here. This is a simple test, and it is a fair test. Those who can contribute most to this country, to its growth, to its strength, to its spirit, will be the first that are admitted to this land. The fairness of this standard is so self-evident that we may well wonder that it has not always been applied. Yet the fact is that for over 4 decades, the immigration policy of the United States has been twisted and has been distorted by the harsh injustice of the national origins quota system. Under that system, the ability of new immigrants to come to America depended upon the country of their birth. Only 3 countries were allowed to supply 70% of all the immigrants. Families were kept apart because a husband or a wife or a child had been born in the wrong place. Men of needed skill and talent were denied entrance because they came from Southern or Eastern Europe or from one of the developing continents. This system violated the basic principle of American democracy, the principle that values and rewards each man on the basis of his merit as a man. It has been un-American in the highest sense because it has been untrue to the faith that brought thousands to these shores, even before we were a country. Today, with my signature, this system is abolished. We can now believe that it will never again shatter the gate to the American nation with the twin barriers of prejudice and privilege. America was...
Okay, Gary.
Ooh, man. Boy, what a lie, huh?
Yeah, that was something else, huh? Okay, so yeah, you can go ahead and yeah, you can exit that.
I was going to show you her wearing Jackie's clothes. She had the pill hat and all. It was truly disgusting.
You mean Lady Bird?
Yeah, Lady Bird had the almost the same outfit on with the pill hat. I guess it was the thing at the time.
Okay, now I'm gonna jump over. I'm gonna jump over to an article here. We'll touch on this quick. It's from NPR.org. In 1965, a conservative tried to keep America white. His plan backfired. And this is from October 3rd, 2015. 50 years ago, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed a new immigration law that would change the face of the nation. But that dramatic impact, ironically, was in good part the result of a major miscalculation by those who actually wanted to limit the bill's effect. The Immigration and Nationality Act, signed at the foot of the Statue of Liberty on October 3rd, 1965, abolished the national origin quota system, under which immigrants were chosen on the basis of their race and ancestry. The quota set aside tens of thousands of visas each year for immigrants from Northern and Western Europe, while many countries in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East were allocated barely 100 slots each. It was a blatantly discriminatory system. Under the new law, immigrants were to be selected on the basis of their family connections in the United States and skills and training they could offer, with all the nationalities treated more or less equally. 50 years after its passage, it's clear that the law definitely altered the complexion of the U.S. population. In 1965, the immigrant share of the population was at an all-time low. 85% of the population was white, and 7 out of 8 immigrants were coming from Europe. By 2010, the share of the U.S. population born overseas had tripled, and 9 out of 10 immigrants were coming from outside Europe. The law was enacted at the height of the civil rights movement, and although it was motivated by the desire to eliminate discrimination, it was largely overshadowed at the time by the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Even its supporters saw the passage as a largely symbolic victory. The bill we signed today is not a revolutionary bill, Johnson said at the Statue of Liberty. It does not affect the lives of millions, and we just heard that in a clip. The fact that its consequences were unanticipated is due largely to the law's rather curious legislative history. The original version of the bill introduced in the Senate by Philip Hart, Democrat, Michigan, and in the House by Emanuel Seller, Democrat, New York, gave immigration preference to people whose skills and training would be especially advantageous to the United States. A nation that was built by the immigrants of all lands can ask those who seek admission, "What can you do for our country?" Johnson said in his 1964 State of the Union address. But we should not be asking, "In what country were you born?" During the debate over the bill, however, conservatives said that it was entirely appropriate to select immigrants on the basis of their national origin. The United States, they argued, was fundamentally an Anglo-Saxon European nation and should stay that way. Senator Sam Ervin, Democrat, North Carolina, said he objected to the idea of giving people from Ethiopia the same right to immigrate to the United States as people from England, France, Germany, or Holland. With all due respect to Ethiopia, Ervin said, I don't know of any contributions that Ethiopia has made to the making of America. The conservatives had an ally in Rep. Michael Fagan, Democrat, Ohio, the famously ornery chairman of the House Immigration Subcommittee. Fagan refused to even hold hearings on the immigration reform bill and relented only after the president gave him the famous Johnson treatment when he took Fagan to Ohio with him on Air Force One. In the end, Fagan agreed to support the reform proposal, but he insisted on a key change. Rather than giving preference to those immigrants whose skills were especially advantageous to the United States, Fagan insisted on prioritizing those immigrants who had already had relatives in the United States, with a preference category for adult brothers and sisters of naturalized U.S. citizens. In justifying the change, Fagan told his conservative allies that a family unification preference would favor those nationalities already represented in the U.S. population, meaning Europeans. Among the conservative groups persuaded by Fagan's argument was the American Legion, which came out in support of the immigration reform after originally opposing it. In an article praising Fagan's legislative prowess, 2 Legion representatives said he had devised a naturally operating national origin system. A family unification preference, they argued, would preserve America's European character. Nobody is quite so apt to be of the same national origins of our present citizens as are members of their immediate families, they wrote. Supporters of the move to eliminate the national origin quotas feared they had been outmaneuvered, but the scheme backfired. What Fagan and his allies did not recognize was the motivation of Europeans to move to the United States was diminishing, while the urge to migrate was growing in Asia, Africa, and other non-European countries. You had a huge pent-up feeling of wanting to come to the New World, said Muzaffar Christie, senior lawyer at the Migration Policy Institute. Some people from those areas that were able to migrate by getting student visas or employer sponsorship or through marriage to a legal resident, and as they gained a foothold in the United States, invited other family members to join them. By 2010, family unification provisions were accounting for about 3/4 of all U.S. immigration, and they were largely benefiting people from those parts of the world that Fagan and his allies considered less desirable. Though it did so inadvertently, the 1965 Immigration Act fulfilled a promise to the countries. Okay, now, and I don't buy that. The founding fathers wanted to keep the country white, and so that's probably enough of that article. Let's see. I wanted to go back to the slideshow real quick. Let's see, share screen. Let's go to PowerPoint. All right. So okay, so as we see here, this is people of foreign extraction immigrating to the United States. So back when the bill was signed, you only had 9 million people that were foreign born, and most of those that were foreign born had come from Europe. But as we see here, this is the number of foreign born people legally immigrating to the United States has skyrocketed, and projections, if this isn't stopped by 2050 or 2060, we're looking at 80 million people imported from non-European countries. And this is just the number of percent of foreign born in the U.S.
Total number of immigrants in the United States, the gross number, is that what you're reflecting there?
Yeah, that's what, this is the projected number of, so 70, this is in millions, 78.2 million by 2060 is the projection.
So we're not adding to 72, 78 the following year.
Yeah, this would be like the running total.
We're talking about, the running total.
Yeah, so you're looking at almost 80 million people by 2060.
80 million out of what, 400 million at that point?
Yeah, probably, so almost a quarter. And that, just because you were born here doesn't mean you're probably not white anyway. So this is just another graph showing the number of percent of foreign born in the U.S. population. And again, it's these are 2000, 2009. It's really shooting up here as you get into this millennium here. So in 1920, the United States was 90% white, and it was like that all the way through 1960. And then in 1970, we see it slipped to 87%. By 1980, 83%. 1990, 76. By 2010, 68%. And in the quote on the side there, it says, "This bill will not, the bill will not flood our cities with immigrants. It will not upset the ethnic mix of our society. It will not relax the standards of admission. It will not cause American workers to lose their jobs." And that was Ted Kennedy's take on the Immigration Act of 1965. But we can see Lyndon Johnson played a key role in getting this legislation passed. And what has been the net result of this? It's been to import millions and millions of non-white people. So when you have an immigration policy that's designed to replace the native population, that's genocide. And that's what the 1965 immigration bill is. In fact, it's going at such a clip that some Jews think it needs to be slowed down. And I've read part of this paper. In October 2001, Jewish supremacist Stephen Steinlight, Gary, there you go.
This is a damn interesting sentence. He says, "A source of Jewish power in America is white guilt over the Holocaust."
Yes.
And that is how they've been able to reign supreme, which is why the truth about the Holocaust is so vital to suppress.
Yes, they need that crutch, but there's been other things too, religion, and there's been a number of and money supply control that's led to Jewish power. But however, Steinlight proposes to his fellow Jews that America's demographic transformation is happening too quickly. The problem, Steinlight says, is that too quick a transformation to a non-white majority is a threat to Jewish power. Yeah, and as you said, the source of Jewish power has been white guilt over the Holocaust, and that this is how they've been able to reign supreme. Steinlight is worried that if whites become a minority too quickly, the new majority of color will no longer have any connection to or feel any guilt for the Holocaust. He is worried that the new non-white majority will no longer want to give the Jews special privileges, and that will no longer want to support the state of Israel. Therefore, Steinlight proposes that non-white immigration must be drastically reduced to manageable levels, which will give the Jews more time to brainwash the newcomers with Jewish propaganda. Steinlight specifically mentions the need to reduce Hispanic and Muslim immigration. Steinlight is also concerned that the speed of the demographic transformation is angering white Americans. No shit, Sherlock. And he is afraid that
I'm one.
Yeah. Yep. He's afraid that if the Jews do not slow down the flood of immigration, whites will become increasingly racially conscious, and there will be a violent backlash against the Jews. By reducing immigration, the Jews can pacify whites. He also proposes another tool to prevent white solidarity, a revival of American patriotism. Yay, wave the flag. Civic nationalism must be revived so that loyalty to America will outweigh any ethnic loyalties among the Gentile populace. In the end, Steinlight says a white minority in America is still the goal, but the Jews must do it more gradually.
That is a fascinating document there. Fascinating.
Yeah, and
fascinating, Don.
And you're not going to get this on other shows, you know,
Well,
especially.
you're just giving us such a lot to think about here, Don. I mean, it's not necessarily, you know, reading or seeing as believing. It's that you're raising really serious issues, and there's a lot of data, statistics, and history to support it. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating.
And we can see it all around us all the time. You know?
Yeah, you can't go out, you can't go to the corner without seeing this stuff. It's everywhere. So, you know, this is just a quick look at the IQ scale. You know, and the people who have been coming in are obviously non-white. You know, I used to live in Minnesota, and we were getting a large Somali population imported, and Somali IQ is in the 60 to 70 range. They're basically, you know, in my worldview, a Somalian is a zombie. You know, it's basically a Walking Dead, an animated corpse. You know, they're basically at a retard level. They can't produce anything. All they can do is consume and destroy your civilization. They can never make any meaningful contribution to it. And that's the end of my slideshow. Let's see, I've got one last article to pop up here. We'll just go over this real quick. Why the decline of America's average IQ is a cause for concern. So by importing non-white people, I'm sorry, it was, what is the IQ breaking point? Okay, so that's a good article. We'll touch on this maybe another time, but just real quick, let's go back to the screen share and we'll hit that. This may be a little hard to read. It's at the Staffan's personality blog.wordpress.com, and we'll just touch on this real quick. He believes that you know, he's done crunched some numbers, and he sees IQ 97 as the breaking point. Seeing these correlations, it's easy to assume that the national IQ averages would correspond to specific degrees of development. You know, that South Korea with an IQ of 107 would be much more civilized than Australia at 98, which in turn would be fairly similar to Russia or some other country at 97. But looking at the stats, this is far from the case. Instead, it seems that there is a point somewhere around 97 above which a modern civilization can be maintained and below which things abruptly begin to fall apart. And to illustrate this, I'll review some of the correlations mentioned above. He goes over like crime, corruption, democracy, you know, kind of an index of civilization. We'll just hit the conclusions and implications. I'm not going to say that every conceivable measure on every conceivable level will show this pattern, but overall, I think we have to conclude the existence of an IQ breaking point somewhere close to 97, at which we see drastically different outcomes depending on whether a country is above or below this level. A country can, of course, still fail above this point, like Italy and most likely North Korea, but a national IQ above 97 represents a necessary but not sufficient condition for success. One implication, if this turns out to be true, is that immigration could pose a serious threat to the West, especially those countries and regions that are closest to the breaking point. The sad part is that since everything is going so well at 98, they may dismiss this risk. This is especially true for those countries and states who are right at 98 and whose immigrants have the lowest IQs. For instance, France or Texas. As for California, that state now clearly has passed the breaking point. Their average IQ is now 95 in California. It'll be interesting to see if they will break the pattern. I suspect they won't, given that few countries that do fairly well below 98, Ireland, Slovenia, Uruguay, are small and lacking in diversity, which is the opposite of California. So it's fully possible that someone already else has noted this breaking point, but since I hadn't heard of it before and didn't seem like common knowledge, I figured it was worth sharing. Yeah, I hadn't seen this number either until I had come across this. So I found this to be...
Well, this is pretty fascinating, Don. You know, I published a book entitled The Evolution of Intelligence, and I wish I could tell you that most of your observations are mistaken, but in fact they are well-founded based upon my own research in relation to these issues. And I just think you've raised some really significant, very serious, heavy questions here. And I'm very, very grateful for this presentation by you tonight.
Absolutely. There was an agenda well before JFK. He was merely a bump in the road to get this agenda through, and they would stop at no cost. So any last words, fellas, before we close out our 200 show?
I think it was damned interesting, really, on both fronts. Larry with the new documents and Don with these questions about immigration and IQ and functionality of civilizations. All really fascinating stuff, and you're not going to get any of it anywhere else.
I just wanted to ask you guys, based on this documentation and research, where would Native Americans fall in this whole scheme?
Oh, okay, I've got, okay, I can just grab it. I've got a
genocide. I don't think there's a more prominent model of genocide than
actually, I'll have some numbers next week. Their population has exploded. I just wanted a quick, IQ by race here. So this is the people. Remember, 97 is kind of that magic number. And do we see anybody that's immigrating into any of these, Europe or America or any of these groups?
I think that there are lots of interesting questions that we don't really have opportunity to address tonight, but you had Native Americans had a certain attitude or philosophy toward the relationship with the earth. They had a North American continent rich in abundance. It could be hunter-gatherers and so forth and live a very comfortable, harmonious life. They had an unusual kind of semi-idyllic relationship with the land, it seems to me, and therefore turn out to be exceptional in many, many respects. But it's a great question, Larry. There's a lot here for us to discuss on future occasions. And I thank you, Don, for raising these issues. However superficially controversial they may appear to be, I think they're actually quite profound and important.
Okay, well, it was...
All right, we'll call it right there.
We'll
call it right there. This has been the new JFK show. Number 200. We'll be back next week. We'll